I was talking to Pastor Kip about this weekend and me speaking, and he kind of gave me liberty to kind of go where I wanted to go. He said, Jonathan, I trust you in Revelation, and so you can stay in the book study and go through Revelation. You can do something more tangential. You can kind of just do whatever the Lord's speaking on your heart. And so what I did was I went ahead in Revelation. He ended last week in Revelation 10, and so I read Revelation 11. And I was reading about, it's a short chapter, I was reading about, it was like a trumpet and like earthquakes and lightning and kind of just all this kind of cool stuff. But I was like, okay, that's interesting. And so let's see what's next. And so I then jumped to Revelation 12. And the title of Revelation 12 is The Woman and the Dragon. And I thought to myself, I don't think I can talk about my 6-year-old daughter when she's hungry. And so this morning we're going to be in 2 Corinthians 4. 2 Corinthians 4 is where we're going to be. I'm going to take a bit more of a 30,000-foot approach. We're going to be talking about the end times. We're going to be still on the same kind of theme, same concepts. I'm going to let Pastor Kip go ahead and take the woman and the dragon and the trumpets and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to take a bit more of a 30,000-foot approach, but in regards to the end times. But then hopefully kind of put the wheels on the ground and hopefully show how having a view of the end times affects the here and now, like right now, today, in this moment. The title of today's message is With Eternity in Mind. With Eternity in Mind. So let's go ahead and read 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 16 through 18. It says this, Therefore, we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us. If you have a Bible or something, or if you're taking notes, I would circle the word achieving. We'll get to that later. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. That's the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians 4, 16 through 18. There's a leadership book that I really enjoy. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Have anyone heard that book? Or yeah, okay, wow, a bunch of you are nodding their heads. Yeah. This book was written 15 years ago or so, and I don't think the author is a follower of Jesus, at least not to my knowledge. But this book continues to hit bestsellers. It continues to be on top 10 lists, all that kind of stuff, because of the wisdom that it offers for leaders who are trying to grow. One of the habits, there are 7 habits in this book. One of the habits that is talked about in this book is beginning with the end in mind. Beginning with the end in mind. It's actually the second habit that he talks about. And I think it's important for our faith that we keep the end in mind, that we have eternity on our mind, that we know where we're going, that we know what's happening. The entire habit is talked about in this book, or he talks about this idea of visualization and imagination and understanding that when you start a project, you want to know how the project ends. That when you partake on a project, you want to know how it ends. How many of you here have done a home remodel project before? A lot of us have done that before, yes. Years ago, this is nothing big or nothing significant, but I remodeled my home office. And it was because I was going to be spending more time in my office, and honestly, like probably most of our offices at the time, it was just a storage unit, basically. Like a bunch of junk was in the office, and I had no space to work, and it just was clouding my creativity and I just was distracted every time I was in the office. And so I wanted to freshen it up. I wanted to make it a space that I wanted to be in. I wanted to be there, that it wasn't a burden. And so Chelsea and I, we tear apart the room, we remove all the furniture, and of course you know that it's not a true remodeling project unless you're painting. And so of course we take a trip to the paint store, and let me tell you, if you ever want to put your marriage to the test, paint something. Yeah, paint something. You want to know how strong your bonds are, have a discussion on, I'll never forget this, have a discussion on whether you want cloud white or white dove. Or maybe you want pearl white. Or maybe you want Oxford white. You're laughing because you've probably been there. Anyways, we survived, thankfully. The woman and the dragon in Revelation 12 is actually a reference to the dragon that was in me having these discussions about the paint color. Anyways, we chose the paint color, and like every remodel project, what I thought would take an afternoon, I foolishly thought that it would take an afternoon. Of course, it turns into weeks, right? That's how all projects like that go. And my office is turned upside down. What was just a messy office turned into a messy living room, turned into a messy kitchen, right? And one day, my wonderful daughter, she comes up to me. She's 6 years old, four at the time. And she's like, "Dad, why did you do this? This is a mess." And I look at her and I'm like, "Girl, you just don't know what it's going to be. Like, I've got a vision. I know what this is supposed to look like. I have the end in mind." How many of you know that it's only a mess if you don't know the end product? It's only a mess if you're missing the blueprint. It's only a mess if you've never looked at the plans. Having the end in mind. The end matters because we are building towards something. We're working towards an end product. This, by the way, is a great picture of our lives. Our God can be trusted. He is the master builder of my life. Some of us right now sitting here today, our lives feel like they're a mess. We don't know where we're going. We don't have it all together. We don't know what tomorrow looks like. Our finances may be a mess. Our job might be a mess. We look at our neighbors and they have everything and we have nothing. Relationships might be falling apart. The enemy in those situations will come in and speak lies to you that you're not good enough. Your life is a mess, isn't it? Look at what you've done. When the judgment of the people around you start to creep in, saying that your life is falling apart, what we should be saying is, "Please excuse the mess. My life is under construction, and I'm believing in the master builder." His name, of course, is Jesus Christ, and he knows where he's taking me. It might be a mess right now, but I'm under construction. It is absolutely important to our faith right here, right now, today, that we know how the story ends. It may feel like a mess right now, but God is building towards something. What we've been doing in Revelation is getting a clearer view of our eschatology. And eschatology is the study of last things, of future events, the idea of what's going to happen, the return of Jesus, what happens to the church, heaven, hell, all those things. It's important to our faith that we keep the end in mind. Why? Because what we've been studying, the eschatology, will always shape my missiology. And missiology is the mission of the church, the mission of you and I right here, right now. If you don't have the end in mind, it's possible that you won't behave properly here and now. If you're taking notes, here's a great way of looking at it. And honestly, this might be the only thing I have you guys write down, is what I believe about the end, what I believe about eternity will impact what I do with where I am. What I believe about eternity will impact with what I do with where I am right now. For the months of December and January, we as a church body kind of collectively participated in the Christmas offering. And the reason we do something like that isn't just to fix our roof or remodel areas of the building or take on projects or things like that. The reason we are giving above and beyond is because we understand that what we have right now in our hands is temporary. But when we put it into God's hands, that which is temporary now becomes eternal. It has an eternal impact. We get invited when we know the end. When we know the end, it impacts what we're doing here and now. It impacts what we're doing here and now. So where are we headed? What are we building for? What are we building towards? But what is the end picture? As I was growing up, I spiritually grew up. I came to know the Lord in 2001, so the early 2000s. And I was obsessed with the end times. Like, have you guys ever heard of that Left Behind series, that book series? Yeah, it came out while I was in high school. I was obsessed with it. I think there was actually a movie, maybe even a movie series. There was a big name actor in it. Does anyone remember? Kirk, yeah, that was the director, right? Didn't he have like someone like Nicolas Cage do it or something? No? Yeah, oh, he was in it. Oh, wow. Well, anyways, yeah, so it was like a big deal, obviously, to me. The Left Behind series, if you're unfamiliar, is a narrative, a story about one specific viewpoint of the end times, following along between an underground network of Christian converts and an oppressive new world order led by the Antichrist. Anyways, me and my friends, we were obsessed with it. The books came out when I was in high school, and I would wait in front of the Christian bookstores to get it on opening day. There was always this long line. In fact, I texted my buddy yesterday, who I would wait in line with him in high school, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm sharing the story," and I just would remember all the fond times, doing that kind of stuff. Like, how crazy was that? And he texted me back. He's like, "Oh, I'm still obsessed. Like, I'm reading this and I'm reading this," and he sent me like 3 books about the end times. But anyways, these books, they always had a tone. Or at least maybe this is how I received it. There was always this tone of trying to scare the hell out of me. Like literally, scare the hell out of me, because I didn't want that to happen to me. I don't want to go through that. And it always put in the forefront of my mind, like an obsession over when is the Lord coming back? Like any moment, every day was like on the cusp, like he's coming back. This is not a joke. I would wake up and I would text my friends, "Are you here? Are you here?" Because I didn't want to miss the boat. I didn't want to miss the ship. I didn't want to miss the beam me up. Like, I did not want to miss that. And another funny story. I remember there was one time I was reading the book during school. Like any moment I could at passing periods, I'm walking through reading the book. Like any moment during class, I'm like just enveloped in the Left Behind book. And I remember I biked home from school. And usually there's people in the house, like my dad and my stepmom and my brothers. But of course I get there and nobody's there. And this is on the forefront of my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got scared. I'm like, do you think? Like I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I didn't chew. Like I didn't go with girls who do. That was in my Baptist church, that was a thing that we said all the time. And I was like, do you think I was forgotten? Like, did I miss it? But I want to help us today because this teaching isn't to scare us, but it's to keep the end in mind. Heaven is not a place for people who are afraid of hell. Heaven is a place for people who love Jesus, who want to be on mission, on mission for Jesus, on his mission, who want to be a part of his purpose. And what I've discovered is that for a lot of people, their thoughts on eternity goes something like this. It's to live the best possible life you can right now. To seek comfort, to seek security, to seek pleasure, to seek happiness. Live the best possible life you can right now. Because one day, Jesus is going to come and whisk you away to heaven. Take you out of this place and whisk you away into heaven, and we'll spend eternity with him. And that isn't the full picture of what the Bible teaches about eternity. Because when the Bible teaches about eternity, it isn't just about going to heaven, but the language that is used is a new heaven and a new earth. A new heaven and a new earth. That God has a new heaven and a new earth. But what a lot of us don't realize is that God's mission isn't simply just to take us out and take us to heaven, but his mission is to join heaven and earth. To join heaven on earth. All throughout the Bible, there isn't just that teaching of being whisked away, but it's this new heaven and this new earth. In Isaiah 65, verse 17, it says, "Behold, I will create new heavens and a new earth." In 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 13, it says, "But in keeping with his promise, we are looking forward to a new heaven and a new earth." There is a building of something new happening. There is a redemption that is happening. There is a restoration of old things that is happening, and the new thing is coming. God isn't simply taking me out of this place, but rather God is coming to this place to restore and to redeem this place. I am making all things new. Therefore, this changes how I live right here and right now. Because my prayer isn't, God, take me out of this place. Like, God, get me out, please. My prayer is, God, give me the endurance. God, give me the endurance to live a life worthy of the calling that I have received. It changes my perspective right here and right now. The biblical narrative is that God is joining heaven and earth. We're not just going somewhere. He's coming to us. And by the way, this has always been the original plan. It's always been, this is not like some shock to God that this is now what has to happen. This has been the plan since the beginning. In Genesis chapter 1 and 2, of course, in the very beginning, God creates. And we know that it's good, and it's good, and it's very good. He creates a garden known as Eden, which is a picture of paradise. Eden has always been the true utopia. It's a glimpse, a vision of what heaven on earth looks like. Eden was described as beautiful. Adam and Eve lived there. God would walk with them in perfect harmony, in perfect relationship. We see God's tangible presence, the fullness of his glory, face to face with mankind. It says in Genesis that they were naked and they felt no shame. In case you were ever wondering what our original design was and where we're headed and where we're going towards, it's this concept of being naked and feeling no shame. It was a picture, but it was also a description of what humanity looks like when we are walking in total freedom with God. To be bare before the Lord, to be bare before each other with no shame, in total freedom. I am healthy. I am full of joy. I am whole. I am in sync with God's plan, God's purpose for me. I'm walking in my original design. But of course, what happens? Adam and Eve break the only rule that they have, and they fall from God's glory. They break his standard. Sin enters into the equation, and what happens when sin enters into the equation is there's ramifications. There are consequences. Immediately they feel shame. Immediately they go into hiding. And they're hiding because they're exposed, they're ashamed, and sin places us outside of the beautiful plan that God has for us. God wants to join heaven to earth. God wants us in relationship with him. But there's a standard, of course. It's to trust him, to obey him, to don't try to be our own God, to not try to figure it out ourselves. He is our only God. But as we break that, as we fall from that, we recognize that we're naked. We recognize shame hits my life. Shame hits our life. Insecurity comes, fear, worry, perversion, depression, death. All of this is ramifications and consequences of sin. And of course, Adam and Eve went through that, and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years later, we are still today hiding from God. We just inherently know something is wrong, and we go into hiding. I mean, think about this in your own life. The other day, I was at the grocery store, and I saw someone that I was mean to. Anyways, I play basketball a lot, and sometimes on the basketball court, my emotions can get the best of me, and maybe I'll say something that I shouldn't say, or say something that's wrong, or say something that's mean, and just kind of be a jerk. And I see them, and immediately, what do? I'm going down the aisle. I turn, and I go a different direction. I hide. I hide. It's no better than what my kids do, right? And what our kids do. The moment there's something that they know they're in trouble, boom, they're running away. They're hiding. We're still doing it today. The beautiful thing about what we discover in the book of Genesis is that as humanity is hiding, we get a glimpse of the true nature of God, because here comes God. We can't get to him, but God comes looking for them. And where are you? Like pursuing them. Anyone here grateful for a God that comes and finds you right where you are? His original plan was heaven on earth. Walk in the garden with me. Enjoy my presence. I am with you. I am your fulfillment. I am your contentment. You guys know that song? I don't want to sing. It goes, I can't get no satisfaction. Yeah, that is the result of sin. I'm just not happy. I'm discontent. I'm not satisfied. It always feels like I'm striving for more. It always feels like I don't have enough. Once I reach the level that I think will bring fulfillment, there's another ladder. There's another rung on the ladder to climb. We're dealing with a sinful humanity. God did not wire you to be discontent and dissatisfied. But we drink from other cups. We try to find our own fulfillment, and it always leaves us dissatisfied. It always leaves us hurting. It always leaves us wanting more. But there's, of course, one who offers living waters for us, that when you drink from him, you'll never thirst again. And his name is Jesus. Genesis 1 and 2 is the start of this beautiful plan. We fall from the plan, of course. But then what's cool about this is Revelation 21 and 22, the end of the Bible. It's a bookends. The last two chapters of the Bible are both announcements of God's goodness and God's original plan. He starts with Eden in Genesis 1 and 2. And he starts with Eden in Genesis 1 and 2. And in Revelation 21 and 22, we get a glimpse of a new heaven and a new earth and a new Jerusalem. It's the announcement of the goodness of God and his plan. It's like bookends. The announcement of the goodness of God and the announcement of goodness of God in Genesis 1 and 2 and Revelation 21 and 22. They're bookends. And everything in between is God cleaning up what we did. Everything in between is God giving us his son. It's God giving us the church. He sends Jesus on a rescue mission. Jesus comes to redeem us. Jesus comes to call us. Jesus calls us out of hiding. He gives us his son, Jesus, and his plan is his church. The church, of course, is God's embassy on earth. And we got to keep that in mind, that we got to know where we're headed. God's plan is to bring heaven to earth through his son, Jesus. And his plan here and now is to use his church as an embassy of heaven. The church is an embassy of heaven. The church, what we're doing now, we are an embassy of heaven. An embassy, of course, is a place that is put in foreign land, and when you step into it, it's a sovereign spot. That when you walk into it, there's different rules, there's different culture, there's different authority. What am I saying? As the people of God, we're not to conform to the patterns of this world, but rather we ought to see that we are on mission, that we have a spiritual outpost here as the church in Westland, Oregon, at our jobs, in our families. There is a spiritual outpost that we are on God's mission because we know the end, because we know how things end, because we know that this world just isn't going away, that there's a redemption happening, that there's a restoration happening. We know that his church is being used to usher in that mission, to usher in that plan, to usher in that heaven on earth, that restoration that has always been God's plan. Pastor Kip and Jeff say this a lot, is that the church is more like a battleship than it is a cruise ship. that we bring heaven down to earth, we push back the gates of hell. This is what it means to have eternity on our mind. We are not being whisked away out of this earth and off we go. No, we are actively being used by God to usher in the restoration and redemption of this earth, of our relationships, of sin, of bringing heaven to earth. Because in the end, that's the end. That's what's happening. And so why does this matter? Like, why does this all matter? Because until I really know the end, as Paul says that we read in the beginning, as I fix my eyes on eternal things, I will know the weight of what I do here and now. Like there is power in our actions right here and right now. That we don't pray, God, I want to leave this place, but God, I can't wait for you to redeem this place. And you're using me in this. Because he's not exactly coming to whisk me away, pop me on a cloud with little wings on my back in the sky. Instead, he is joining his heaven to a redeemed earth and using me to fulfill that. You see, because if it was, humor me for a second, if it was just heaven that we're being whisked away, if that was what the plan was, all we would receive then is compensation for what is lost. And bear with me here for a second. If all it is that we are being whisked away up to heaven, all we'd be receiving is compensation for everything that we've lost. We've lost our health. We've lost our youth. We've lost friends. We've lost family. We've lost relationships. There's brokenness. There's pain. I know if we were to talk about our stories and the struggles that we've got, we've lost a lot. And then, of course, there's things that you've always wanted to do but never could. Books you wanted to write, or poetry that you wanted to maybe write, but you were maybe never really good enough or didn't have the time to. Books you wanted to write, or music you wanted to compose that we'll never get to because we're just bombarded by just so much in this life. Man, I have this piano that sits in my office, and I've been meaning to learn it. Been meaning to do it, but I just get caught up in life. I get caught up in the brokenness of it. In other words, if being whisked away to heaven was our hope, then all we'd be receiving is compensation for all of that brokenness, all of that suffering, all of that pain. But, I'm sorry, I'm sorry you went through that. Here's to better times. Here's to good times, kind of a thing, just compensation for it. But if the future is a new heaven, if the future is a new earth, if there's a redemption happening, if there's a restoration happening of the world and life that I've always wanted, of the original plan that God has for me, that changes everything. Let me give you an example. Years ago, and I think this will put kind of teeth to what I'm saying, because I realize it's kind of just up here, even in my own head. I'm kind of like, what am I talking about? So let me give you this example. Years ago, I had a nightmare, and it was one of those really vivid nightmares. I don't remember the details now, but it's one of those where you wake up and you just remember every detail. And it was like a horrific nightmare. My family had been killed. And I remember the details of it, or at the time, I remembered the details of it. And I woke up, thinking I had lost them. It was so vivid, it was so real, I was sweating. And I know this isn't a unique experience. I know probably many of us have had a similar experience. And I woke up panting, dripping sweat, and thinking I had lost them. And of course, I slapped next to me, and of course, Chelsea's right there. I hadn't lost them, it was just a nightmare. And it was 3 or 4 in the morning. And, I had said goodnight to my wife. I had said goodnight to the kids. I said I loved you. I do the whole bedtime routine, right? And I had loved them before the nightmare. I did. But the love I had for them after that nightmare, oh my gosh. I wanted to just hug them and kiss them and just be with them. But of course it's 3 a.m., so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. But the point of that is the joy of finding them wasn't a joy that was in spite of the nightmare. I'll go this far. The joy and love I had for them was enhanced by the nightmare. My joy was intensified because of the nightmare. As it were, the nightmare was taken up into my joy. The nightmare was made, or my joy was made greater because of the nightmare. And so what am I trying to say with this? If heaven is a compensation for all the stuff that we've wanted but never had, that's one thing. But if the new heavens and new earth is our hope, and we have a restoration of everything we've always wanted, it will make every horrible thing you've experienced nothing but a nightmare. It'll turn the worst thing that has ever happened to you into a nightmare. And as a nightmare will do nothing but to increase your future joy, this is the ultimate defeat of evil. What a restoration of our life, what a restoration of this world looks like, what it does to evil, is it makes evil a servant of your joy. It makes evil a servant of your joy. The Christian hope doesn't just compensate you for suffering. It undoes it. It absolutely undoes it. Our momentary affliction achieves the eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. He's not just whisking us away, but instead, he's bringing heaven to earth. He's redeeming and he's restoring this earth. It was always the plan through his son Jesus, through his church, to redeem and restore. And this is where we'll end. Let's go ahead and read again 2 Corinthians 4, verses 16 through 18. And band, you guys can come on up, because this is where we'll end. Now, with all of this in mind, I want us to read again 2 Corinthians 4, 16 through 18, because now it has a different kind of weight. Here's what Paul says. Therefore, we do not lose heart. Though outwardly, we're wasting away. We're going through some things. We have struggles. We have pain. We have evil that exists in our lives. Inwardly, we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us, making greater for us, being consumed in for us, being redeemed and restored for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. This is what it means to keep the faith. This is what it means to walk out a faith journey. This is what it means to have eternity on our mind, that I actually know and believe how the story is going to end. That while I can't see it right now, I put my trust in God, believing that he is at work because he is the master builder. Because in the end, he is victorious. In the end, he will be the one with the glory. Because in the end, he will redeem and restore this earth. He will redeem and restore all that is lost. He will wipe every tear. He will wipe every eye. He will redeem and restore. And I keep this in mind because as life gets difficult, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep living a life worthy of the calling I've received because he's bringing heaven to earth. Let's go ahead and take communion together now as we close. If you have it here. We'll go ahead and start with the bread. If you want to go ahead and open up the bread portion. Let's go ahead and pray. Father, we thank you for your body broken on the cross, for the forgiveness of my sin, of our sin. Father, we receive that today. We do this in remembrance of you. Go ahead and take the bread. And now go ahead and open up the wine, juice. And let's go ahead and pray. Father, thank you for the blood spilled on the cross that ushers in your new covenant, that we can step into your plan. We could step into your purpose, that we receive your redemptive work in our lives, that you are making all things new, that you aren't simply compensating us for what we've lost, but you're coming in and using what was lost to enhance, to make new. We receive that in this moment today. Go ahead and take the wine or juice. Let's go ahead and stand together as we worship with this closing song.